Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Monday, December 21st, 2020. Today, I'm going to recap the weekend's college football games, NFL, college basketball, and NBA preseason games, and look ahead to today's bowl game, Monday Night Football game, college basketball games, and then we'll talk about the return of the NHL finally becoming official. A big-time superstar in the NBA signs an extension. And my best bet of the day. All right, we'll start in college football for this show because it was a big weekend in college football. The playoffs were announced. But first, I'm going to go over the results from yesterday. And then we'll pick the bowl game from today. Or that's going to be played today. We'll start Friday. UAB over Marshall 22-13 in the Conference USA Championship game. Ball State over Buffalo 38-28 in the MAC Championship game. So that was an upset. Nebraska over Rutgers 28-21. Oregon over number 13 USA 31-24 in the Pac-12 title game. And then Saturday, number 4 Ohio State over number 14 Northwestern 22-10 in the Big Ten Championship game. Number 5 Texas A&M over Tennessee 34-13. Number 10 Oklahoma over number 6 Iowa State 27-21 in the Big 12 Championship game. Utah over Washington State 45-28. Army over Air Force 10-7. LSU over Ole Miss 53-48. Mississippi State over Missouri 51-32. Number 3 Clemson over number 2 Notre Dame 34-10 in the ACC title game. Wisconsin over Minnesota 20-17 in overtime. Number 24 San Jose State over Boise State 34-20 in the Mountain West title game. Penn State over Illinois 56-21. Stanford over UCLA 48-47 in double overtime. Number 1 Alabama over number 7 Florida 52-46 in the SEC title game. Number 9 Cincinnati over number 23 Tulsa 27-24 in the AAC title game. And Arizona State over Oregon State 46-33. So 4-1 with the picks. The one loser was Iowa State. And I lost that one by a half point. All right, so the college football playoff. You got number 1 Alabama against number 4 Notre Dame, and number 2 Clemson against number 3 Ohio State. We'll do all the projections and stuff for that when the time comes. So, just wanted to talk about the college football playoff top 4, and then the rest of the college football playoff rankings. Number 5, Texas A&M. So A&M came very close. Number 6, Oklahoma. 7, Florida. 8, Cincinnati, 9, Georgia, 10, Iowa State, 11, Indiana, 12, Coastal Carolina, 13, North Carolina, 14, Northern Iowa, 15th, Iowa, 16th, BYU, 17th, USC, 18th, Miami, 19th, Louisiana, 20th, Texas, 21st, Oklahoma State, 22nd, San Jose State, 23rd, NC State, 24th, Tulsa, and 25th, Oregon. So the team that is the group of 5 that's headed to a New Year's 6 is Cincinnati. That's a lot of people thought before the year. Some people thought Boise. Coastal Carolina's not in a New Year's 6. Some people thought that they could have possibly got it over Cincinnati, but no, Cincinnati was undefeated. Plus, I think the committee has more respect for the American than they do for the Sun Belt. So that's a factor into this as well. So we have a game today, actually. It is the Myrtle Beach Bowl between Appalachian State and North Texas, 2:30 on ESPN. my projections for this game is Appalachian State by 8 and a total of 61. Meanwhile, FanDuel for today has App State by 21.5 and a total of 65.5. So, I got a big edge on North Texas and a small edge on the under. And I'm going to take North Texas plus the points just to keep it within the number. I just think that's too big for App State. App State is not App State of old. North Texas was a little worse than I thought they were going to be this year. I just think this is a win by App State in the teens rather than the 20s. So give me North Texas plus the 21.5, and I also have a lean towards the under as well. So the podcasts play the first bowl game pick. And obviously we're going to keep track of how I do on the bowls. And in the Fab 5 for college football for the year is done. So I actually started off strong and then had a couple weeks slump and then finished the year strong. So I think I was above 500 for the year in college football Fab 5. But we'll see how we do with the bowls. So my first bowl pick will be North Texas plus 21.5 against Appalachian State. I just think that's too big of a number. I think this is a shootout. I wouldn't bet the under, even though I have an edge on it, because I think both of these teams can just flat out score. But I think this has shootout potential, so I would take North Texas plus the 21.5 for the pick. Now we'll do NFL from the weekend and then look ahead to tonight's Monday Night Football game. So without further ado, here we go. Saturday, Bills over the Broncos, 48-19. What an impressive win for the Bills, who go to 11-3. Denver drops to 5-9. Josh Allen has to be in the MVP conversation now, in my opinion. Packers over the Panthers, 24-16. Packers 11-3. Panthers 4-10. And now yesterday's results. The Buccaneers come back from double digits down to beat the Falcons 31-27. The Bucs 9-5. Atlanta 4-10. Cowboys over the 49ers 41-33. So the money line pick of the week works out. Dallas 5-9. San Fran 5-9. Dallas still alive in the NFC East race. Titans over the Lions 46-25. I didn't feel good about this over pick, but Tennessee nearly did it by themselves. They go to 10-4. Detroit drops to 5-9. Colts over the Texans 27-20. So the one pick I lost in the NFL yesterday, lost by a half point. Colts 10-4. Texans 4-10. Dolphins over the Patriots 22-12. Patriots drop to 6-8 and get eliminated from playoff contention. Miami improves to 9-5 and did this without Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki. So that's what made that win impressive for Miami. I wonder if they closed as an underdog in that game. Bears over the Vikings 33-27. The Bears are playing great right now. They're 7-7. Minnesota is 6-8. So it's technically a loser leaves town match. So Chicago survives. Seahawks over Washington 20-15. Seahawks 10-4. Washington 6-8. So Washington was lucky that the Giants lost and didn't have Daniel Jones or James Bradbury, which we'll get to, because Washington's still in the driver's seat for the division. Although Dallas, they have the tiebreaker over Dallas, but Dallas is coming on a little bit here. Ravens over the Jaguars 40-14. Baltimore 9-5. Jacksonville 1-13. And the most surprising result of the weekend, the New York Football Jets over the Rams, 23-20. The Jets are 1-13. The Rams are 9-5. And the Jets might have just cost themselves a shot at Trevor Lawrence. Cardinals over the Eagles, 33-26. Cardinals 8-6. Philly 4-9-1. So the Cardinals really starting to play better and are in the driver's seat for that last wildcard spot in the NFC. The Chiefs over the Saints, 32-29. The Chiefs are 13-1. The Saints are 10-4. Drew Brees comes back, but the Chiefs hold on and get it done, as the Saints did not have Michael Thomas. And last but not least, the Browns over the Giants, 20-6. The Browns get the double-digit wins for the first time since 2007. They go to 10-4, and the Giants drop to 5-9. They clinch their fourth consecutive losing season. Baker Mayfield's playing some great football right now, and the AFC North is a little bit interesting, but tonight is a big one in the AFC North between the Steelers and the Bengals. We talked about it a little bit on the Friday show, but I'll go over my pick again on today's show in case you guys all forgot. My projection is Pittsburgh by 20 and a total of 44. Meanwhile, FanDuel has Steelers by 14.5 at the total of 40. I love the Steelers minus 14.5. It was 13, but and then it was 13.5. Then it was 14. Now it's 14.5, but I still like it. Still have a big enough edge to bet the number. And getting value too at minus 108. So give me the Steelers minus 14.5 at a valuable minus 108. I think they're going to destroy Cincinnati. I think it's going to be like a 31-13 type of game. And this is a good spot for Pittsburgh to ride the ship. Because obviously Cincinnati is one of the worst defensive teams in the league, and they don't have Joe Burrow either. So, yeah, I really expect Pittsburgh to come out and dominate. Now we'll go over the weekend's college basketball games and look ahead to tonight's games. So, without further ado, here we go. Starting with Friday night, the December 18th. Gardner-Webb over VMI, 88-77. Western Michigan over Central Michigan, 76-61. Georgia State over Carver, 122-57. NC A&T over Greensboro, 91-45. App State over Columbia International, 77-41. Southern Illinois over North Dakota, 62-50. Niagara over Fairfield, 68-51. UNC Wilmington over Norfolk State, 80-72. BYU does upset. San Diego State was favored. Number 18, San Diego State, 72-62. Howard over Hampton, 81-76. Monmouth over St. Peter, 78-76. Bowling Green over Robert Morris, 85-65. Drake over South Dakota, 75-57. Montana over Dickinson State, 78-51. Coastal Carolina over Alice Lloyd College, 86-63. Presbyterian over South Carolina State, 62-56. SIU Edwardsville over Morehead State, 69-65. Richmond over Loyola Chicago, 75-73. Number 10, Tennessee over Tennessee Tech, 103-49. Wichita State over Emporia State, 73-57. Iona over Rider, 70-56. Davidson over Rhode Island, 67-58. Tulsa over Northwestern State, 82-55. Florida Gulf Coast over Weber International, 112-39. Western Carolina over Charleston, 76-70 in overtime. Belmont over Tennessee State, 88-63. Northern Illinois over Chicago State, 64-54. Georgia Tech over Florida A&M, 74-64. Little Rock over Champion Christian, 78-50. Tennessee Martin over Southeast Missouri State, 69-67. Number 8, West Virginia over Iowa State, 70-65. Utah State over Northern Colorado, 63-50. Idaho State over Sagu AIC, 113-46. Southern Utah over Bastedo, 98-64. Utah over Idaho, 79-41. Washington State over Montana, 82-54. Nevada over Air Force, 74-57. And Weber State over Portland State, 94-66. Saturday's results. Indiana over Butler, 68-60. Number 1, Gonzaga over number 3, Iowa, 99-88. Number 12, Wisconsin over number 23, Louisville, 85-48. Auburn over Troy, 77-41. The Citadel over Longwood, 91-89. UMKC over Kansas Christian, 98-42. UNC Greensboro over Elon, 71-64. East Carolina over James Madison, 73-64. Indiana State over Ball State, 67-57. Number 22, North Carolina over Kentucky, 75-63. Akron over Malone, 93-83. West Virginia Tech over Morehead State, 73-67. Western Kentucky over Alabama, 73-71. Marist over Manhattan, 61-39. St. Bonaventure over Hopes, 77-69. Drexel over Fairleigh Dickinson, 85-68. Tulane over Grambling, 77-65. High Point over William & Mary, 71-49. Milwaukee over Green Bay, 68-65. Northern Kentucky over Youngstown State, 79-64. Rice State over Detroit Mercy, 93-70. Toledo over Valpo, 71-57. Stony Brook over Binghamton, 73-59. Hartford over Maine, 63-60. Louisiana Tech over Lamar, 86-57. Texas State over Denver, 70-68. Purdue over Notre Dame, 88-78. Dayton over Ole Miss, 65-62. Central Arkansas over Tribute Christian, 92-28. Sam Houston State over Rice, 82-69. Bama A&M over South Alabama, 93-90 in double overtime. A&M Corpus Christi over Our Lady, 99-72. Southern Miss over UL Monroe, 60-47. Chattanooga over UAB, 69-66. Oregon over Portland, 80-41. Miami over Jacksonville, 73-64. Number 2, Baylor over Kansas State, 169. East Tennessee State over Lee, 62-53. Charlotte over NCNT, 76-72. Winthrop over Foreman, 87-71. Niagara over Fairfield, 81-61. NC State over Campbell, 69-50. UMBC over Albany, 65-64. Temple over NJIT, 72-60. LaSalle over Delaware State, 71-61. Sanford over Kennesaw State, 65-63. Number 20, Ohio State over UCLA, 77-70. Cal over Cal State Northridge, 87-56. Flagler over North Florida, 73-66. St. Peter's over Monmouth, 78-76. Oklahoma over Houston Baptist, 84-65. Virginia Tech over Coppin State, 97-57. UMKC over Kansas Christian, 95-36. Stetson over Carver, 95-51. Santa Barbara over Pepperdine, 75-63. Syracuse over Buffalo, 107-96 in overtime. Eastern Washington over Northern Arizona, 80-64. UC Irvine over San Diego, 85-53. Cal State Bakersfield over St. Catherine, 87-46. Cleveland State over Purdue Fort Wayne, 63-61. Fresno State over Fresno Pacific, 78-65. Georgia Southern over FIU, 103-99 in double overtime. Iona over Rider, 72-64. UIC over Oakland, 74-72. Stanford over Arizona, 78-75. Tennessee State over Crowley's Ridge, 90-68. Louisiana over McNeese, 75-65. Georgia over Cincinnati, 83-68. Missouri State over Northwestern State, 94-67. Vandy over Radford, 59-50. Bradley over Miami of Ohio, 69-68. St. Mary's over Colorado State, 53-33. Number 7, Villanova, St. Joe's, 88-68. UCF over number 15, Florida State, 86-74. Dixie State over Bethesda, 90-69. Loyola Marymount over Cal Poly, 76-52. And Hawaii over Hawaii Hilo, 89-66. Sunday, number 9, Creighton over UConn, 76-74 in overtime. Number 19, Rutgers over number 13, Illinois, 91-88. Central Michigan over Olivet College, 127-66. Iowa State over Jackson State, 60-45. Number 11, Texas over Oklahoma State, 77-74. Old Dominion over Northeastern, 66-62. Marshall over Robert Morris, 85-71. Marist over Manhattan, 72-67 in overtime. Arkansas over Oral Roberts, 87-76. Milwaukee over Green Bay, 74-62. Rice State over Detroit Mercer, 85-72. Stony Brook over Binghamton, 80-70 in overtime. UMBC over Albany, 65-60. Hartford over Maine, 65-50. Xavier over Marquette, 91-88. North Alabama over Freed Hardman, 82-56. Drake over Chicago State, 111-67. Youngstown State over Northern Kentucky, 70-60. Portland State over Weber State, 74-72. Number 6, Houston over Alcorn State, 88-55. UTSA over Our Lady, 102-70. Arkansas State over Champion Christian, 90-50. Providence over Seton Hall, 80-77 in overtime. James Madison over Alice Lloyd College, 98-55. South Dakota over Mount Marty College, 84-44. Cleveland State over Purdue Fort Wayne, 89-80. UIC over Oakland, 90-73. Western Illinois over Tennessee Martin, 81-63. UTEP over Benedictine, Arizona, 79-59. Air Force over Nevada, 68-66. Georgia Tech over Delaware State, 97-69. St. John's over Georgetown, 94-83. Northwestern over number 4 Michigan State, 79-65. Georgia Southern over Carver, 119-43. San Francisco over Grand Canyon, 68-65. Pacific over Westmont, 92-64. Minnesota over St. Louis, 90-82. And Colorado over Washington, 92-69. And now today's games in the world of college basketball. At 12 o'clock, you have Morehead State at number 24, Clemson. My line for this game is Clemson by 14. And Clemson is favored by 23.5, so I have to take Morehead State plus the 23.5 at a valuable number at minus 106. 1 o'clock, you have VMI and George Mason. I project George Mason by 5.5. And George Mason's favored by 8.5, so I have to take VMI plus the 8.5 at a super valuable minus 102. UNC Wilmington and Campbell, my projection is Campbell by 5.5. And Campbell's favored by 1.5. So I'm going to lay the 1.5 with Campbell at a very, very, very valuable even money. Wow. Getting Campbell at even money. SDC Network, Wofford, Texas A&M. My projection is Wofford by 0.5 and A&M's favored by 6.5. I'm taking Wofford plus the 6.5 at the juice minus 115. I'm taking them to win straight up at plus 235. 2 o'clock, Bethesda, Southern Utah, and Crowley's Ridge, Lipscomb. We can skip those. Jacksonville State and Kansas State. My projection is Kansas State by 18.5, and Kansas State is favored by 11.5. I'm going to lay to 11.5 with Kansas State at a very juiced minus 118. 3 o'clock, New Orleans against Rice. This game, weirdly, was not on my sheet, so I have to do this on the fly here. So my projection here is Rice plus, or getting a half point. So my line for this is New Orleans by 0.5, and Rice is favored by 6.5. So I'm going to take New Orleans plus 6.5 and a valuable minus 104, and I'm taking them to win straight up 2 at plus 260. Texas State, Northern Arizona. My projection for this is Texas State by 28.5. And Texas State's giving 8.5. I'm going to lay 8.5 at Texas State at a juice number at minus 118. 4 o'clock, Bryant against UMass. My projection here is UMass by 14. And it is UMass by 9.5. I'm going to lay to 9.5 at UMass at a valuable number at minus 106. South Carolina State against Furman. My number for this is Furman by a whopping 38. And Furman's favored by 30.5. And I'm going to lay to 30.5 with Furman at a juice number at minus 118. 5 o'clock, you have Vermont against UMass Lowell. My line for this is Vermont by 16. And Vermont's giving 8.5. I'm going to lay 8.5 with Vermont at a juice number at minus 112. Florida College, FIU, we can skip. St. Catharines Pacific and Defiance. Miami of Ohio, canceled. 6 o'clock, St. Joe's against number 10, Tennessee. My line for this is Tennessee by 33. And it's 21.5. I'm going to lay the 21.5 of Tennessee against St. Joe's in that one. Eastern Illinois and SIU Edwardsville. My projection is Eastern Illinois by a whopping 22, and they're laying 2.5. I'm going to lay the 2.5 at Eastern Illinois at a juice number at minus 115. Southeast Louisiana, Steve F. Austin, and San Diego and Arizona both canceled. 7 o'clock, Gardner Webb against number 15, Florida State. My projection is Seminoles by 20.5. And that's what the line is. So I have to go to the total, 142.5. I'm going to take the under here. I don't feel good about it at minus 105. Morgan State against Delaware. My projection is Delaware by 13. And I don't have a lineup for this game. And neither does ESPN. I mean FanDuel. So I'm going to just say Delaware wins. Carver, FIU, and Edwards Water against North Florida. We can skip those. Sacred Heart against Wagner. My projection here is Wagner by 11. And Wagner's favored by 5.5. I'm going to lay the 5.5 of Wagner against Sacred Heart at a valuable number at minus 108. Prairie View against Washington State. My projection is Washington State by 11. And Washington State's laying 12.5. So I'm going to go to the total, 131.5, and I'm going to take the over at a slightly juiced minus 112. All right, next up is Belmont against Evansville. My projection for this is Belmont by 25, and Belmont is favored by 9.5. I'm going to lay the 9.5 of Belmont against Evansville. I think they're going to kick ass tonight. I really do. Sam Houston State and Texas Rio Grande. I have Texas Rio Grande by 8 as my projection. They're favored by 5.5. I'm going to lay the 5.5 with Rio Grande at a slightly juiced number at minus 112. Hampton and Charleston Southern. My projected line is Charleston Southern by 15, and they're only favored by 5.5. I'm going to lay the 5.5 with Charleston Southern against Hampton in a big South matchup there. Charleston against Georgia State. My line is Georgia State by 16.5. They're favored by 10.5, so I'm going to lay the 10.5 with Georgia State. 7:30 Fox Sports 1, Southern Illinois against Butler. My projection is Butler by 12.5. And Butler is favored by 9.5, so I'm going to lay the 9.5 with Butler at a very valuable number at minus 104. Bellarmine and Middle Tennessee canceled. 8 o'clock, Arkansas Pine Bluff and number 2 Baylor. My projection for this game is probably the biggest projection I've had all year. Baylor by 62.5. And the number is locked on here on FanDuel. ESPN has it at 42. Total is 41.5. I have no choice but to take the over. Like, Baylor's going to put up triple digits in this game. So give me over 141.5 at a slightly juiced at minus 115. Mississippi Valley State against Mississippi State. My projection is Mississippi State by 38.5. Meanwhile, Mississippi State is favored by 36.5. So the differential is only 2 points, and I'm still going to lay it with Mississippi State. Tulsa against Memphis. on ESPN2. My projection is Memphis by 10.5, and Memphis is giving 8.5. So I'm going to lay the 8.5 with Memphis against Tulsa. Next up is Longwood against Virginia Tech. I project the Hokies by 27. They're favored by 24.5. I'm going to lay the 24.5 with Virginia Tech. Murray State and Austin Peay on ESPNU. My projection for this game is Murray State by 2.5. And Murray State's favored by 3.5. Total's 145.5. I'm going to take the over. Normally the OVC is an over league, but sometimes it's an under league. But I'm going to take the over 145.5 at a slightly valuable minus 108. Next up is Little Rock against Morehead State. Or Missouri State, my bad. My projection for this one is Little Rock by 4.5. And they're favored by 1.5. I'm going to lay the 1.5 with Little Rock against Missouri State at a super valuable plus 102. Next up is Belhaven, Sanford. We could skip that. 9 o'clock. Northwestern State against number 1 Gonzaga. My projection is Gonzaga 36.5. Meanwhile, they're favored by 38.5. I got to take Northwestern State plus the 38.5 of a 2-point differential. Anything more than 1.5, I bet on it. So, give me Northwestern State against Georgia to stay within the number. Cal State Bakersfield against Stanford. My number's 13.5 in favor of Stanford. Meanwhile, FanDuel has it 15.5. So, I have some value on Bakersfield. So, I'm going to take Bakersfield plus the 15.5 at a valuable minus 108. Texas Southern against BYU. My projection is BYU by 22.5, and it is 16.5, so I'm going to lay the 16.5 with BYU at a juiced minus 114. San Jose State and Utah State, so we got a little bit of Mountain West action for you tonight. My line is Utah State by 18.5, and that's what it is on FanDuel. Total's 147.5, and I'm going to take... this is a tough one. Take the under. I don't feel super about it. I'm going to take under 147.5. I could see this being a little bit lower scoring than people expect. And at 9:30, New Mexico and Boise State. My projection is Boise by 12. Meanwhile, Boise State is favored by 11.5. So a half point off, so I go to the total 144.5. This game, I think, will be an under 2. Slightly juiced minus 114. It's just a gut feeling. So under 144.5, I had a juiced minus 114 in the second of the two late night window Mountain West games. All right, now we'll go over the last of the NBA preseason games from the weekend before the big day tomorrow. So we'll start with Friday night. Knicks over the Cavaliers, 119-83. That's impressive. 76ers over Pacers, 113-107. Heat over Raptors, 117-105. Nets over the Celtics, 113-89. Kevin Durant looked like Kevin Durant in that game. Pelicans over the Bucks, 127-113. Bulls over the Thunder, 105-103. Nuggets over the Blazers, 129-96. And Lakers over the Suns, 114-113. And in the last three games of the preseason on Saturday night, Magic over the Hornets, 120-117. Wizards over the Pistons, 99-96. And Hawks over the Grizzlies, 117-116. So tomorrow's the big day. The NBA starts. We will break out the special NBA season predictions podcast tonight. Well, I'm going to do the standings, predict how the playoffs are going to go, and crown an NBA champion, awards, breakout players, disappointment players, bold predictions, and more. So it's going to be a fun podcast to do, and I'm looking forward to see how this will all come together. Now I want to talk about something very important that happened over the weekend, and that is the return of the NHL. It's finally been announced. They made it official yesterday that the players and the league came together. 56 game schedule starting January 13th. That is a Wednesday. Even Sunday Night Football was promoting hockey being back, so that was pretty cool too. A couple of notes here. The divisions. The North Division. Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver, Winnipeg. So the Canadian division is called the North Division. The West Division. Anaheim, Arizona, Colorado, Los Angeles, Minnesota, San Jose, St. Louis, and Vegas. The Central Division. Carolina, Chicago, Columbus, Dallas, Detroit, Florida, Nashville, Tampa Bay. And the East Division. Boston, Buffalo, New Jersey, the Islanders, the Rangers, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Washington. So, that's that. Those are the divisions. And now the question is, for the playoffs, do they move the Western Conference teams back to the West, or do they keep them within the divisions? So here we go. How will the Stanley Cup playoffs work? The Stanley Cup playoffs would feature 16 teams in the traditional best-of-7 4-round format and conclude around mid-July with the plan of returning to a normal hockey calendar for the 2021-2022 season, and with the regular season beginning around in October. The top 4 teams in each division will qualify for the Stanley Cup playoffs, with intra-divisional play in the first 2 rounds, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. The 4 teams that advance to the semifinal round would be seeded by their regular season points total, with the number 1 seed playing the number 4 seed in one series, and the number 2 playing the number 3 meeting in the others. So, I'm not saying this will happen, but, let's say if this was in 2015 when the Blackhawks were a contender. We could have had a Western Conference team against a Western Conference team in the Stanley Cup Finals. So that is very, very weird. But I doubt that will happen. But you never know. And then the other need to know, when will the schedule be announced? The NHL and the Players Association will release the health and safety protocols, transition rules, and critical dates calendar, as well as the 2020-2021 schedule in the coming days. And then Gary Bettman said, while we are aware of the challenges ahead, as we saw the case, as was the case last spring and summer, we are continuing to prioritize health and safety for our participants in the communities in which we live and play, and was the case last spring and summer. I think that the NHLPA, particularly the executive director Don Fair, for working cooperatively with us to get our league back on the ice. Where will games be played? In reaching agreement on the format for the 2020-21 season, the NHL and PA determined that the ongoing closure of the U.S.-Canada border required realignment, and the league and the players also sought to minimize travel as much as possible by shifting to exclusively intra-divisional play. It is the current plan to play games in the home arenas of the participating teams, while understanding that most arenas will not, at least in the initial part of the season, be able to host fans. However, depending on prevailing conditions in both local markets and across North America, the league will be prepared to play games in one or more neutral site venues per division should it become necessary. And how often will teams play each other? Each team in the East, Central, and West divisions will play every other team in its division 8 times, while each team in the North Division will play every other team in its division 9 or 10 times. So, and then important dates. Puck drop, January 13th. Trade deadline, April 12th. End of the regular season, May 8th. Expansion draft, July 21st. The NHL draft, July 23rd, 24th. Free agent frenzy, July 28th. So, there you have it, the expansion draft. So, come 21-22 will be the beginning of the Kraken. So, once I do my NHL season predictions podcast, I gotta predict which players will be picked by the Kraken. So that's gonna be a fun exercise to do, obviously. So there you have it. The NHL's back. I just went over everything that's important. I'm gonna have some guests on to preview the season, obviously. So that should be fun as well. So we talked about Giannis Antetokounmpo getting a contract extension. Another big-name NBA player agreed to a contract extension over the weekend. And that is Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz. 5 years, $205 million. Good for Rudy Gobert. There are rumors about him getting traded. So Utah makes a commitment to its franchise big guy. The man who has won several Defensive Player of the Year awards. And is just a big part of the Jazz's success over the past several years. Obviously, he was the first big-name sports figure to test positive for COVID-19, and he went through so much, and this is well-deserved for Rudy Gobert. And we talked about Giannis getting the extension, and obviously this takes him out of the free agent class of 2021, and it takes Gobert out of it too. So, and then LeBron got an extension, so he's out. So, and then Anthony Davis got opted out and re-signed. So, the NBA free agent class of 2021 is not that strong anymore. And if I'm not mistaken, the best free agent in the 2021 class could be Kawhi Leonard, which isn't bad, obviously. Kawhi Leonard, obviously a two-time NBA champion. Victor Oladipo, Lowry, DeRozan, Drew Holiday. But you would think that they would extend him down in Milwaukee because they gave up so much for him. And then there's a lot of mediocre players. Oh, Chris Paul's a free agent, but he has a club option, and it's Chris Paul. Andre Drummond. It's a lot of mediocre free agents. All the big ones signed except for Kawhi. So before you know it, who knows? Kawhi could very well sign an extension. Paul George got an extension with the Clippers, so Kawhi could be next. But if it doesn't work out, maybe he bolts. So the best player in next year's free agent class could very well be Kawhi Leonard, which isn't bad, obviously. Like I said, two-time NBA champion, but people are really looking forward to Giannis being a free agent and Rudy Gobert being a free agent. But those guys sign extensions with their respective teams, and those franchises have to be very, very happy with those players signing extensions. And now my best bet of the day, brought to you by FanDuel. There's a lot of choices to be had for best bet. I'm going to look in college basketball before I decide to pull the trigger on something else. I'm going to go tonight for best bet with, this is a hard one for tonight because there's a lot of what I would consider close calls. I'm going to go with Eastern Illinois minus the 3.5 against SIU Edwardsville. I mentioned earlier that my projection was 22, and minus 3.5 at minus 102 is extremely valuable. So that's going to be my best bet of the day. Eastern Illinois minus 3.5 against SIU Edwardsville. So that's it for the day. I had no time for the power forward rankings. I'm going to do that and the center rankings on tomorrow's podcast. Top 100 players list I'll have on the podcast on Wednesday. And tomorrow we'll preview the slate for the NBA opening night. We'll do projections and totals as well. We're going to recap the Monday Night Football game from last night, and then we'll recap college basketball, look ahead to the games today, and then the college football bowl games will recap the game being played today and look ahead to the 2 games being played tomorrow as well. Hope you guys have a great day, everyone.